Hey, welcome back to the stash. It's no secret that the Amazing Spider-Man has been exhausting to read for a while now. Ever since Zeb Wells took over, this volume has been defined by one thing: Peter Parker at his absolute lowest, with little to no hope in sight. Whether it was the baffling, dragged out mystery about what did Peter do, or the destruction of his relationships, or even just the overall miserable tone that's lingered throughout the entire run, this volume has been a constant slog. And now with the 8 deaths of Spider-Man, things have somehow managed to get worse. A story that should feel high stakes and emotionally powerful has instead become just another chapter in a series that seems determined to make Spider-Man as miserable as possible. I mean, you'd think a storyline about Peter dying over and over again, breaking under the weight of it all, and eventually quitting entirely, going against his very core, would have something meaningful to say about the character. But instead, it just feels like yet another massive character assassination for our hero. The Amazing Spider-Man issue 65 Point Death's entry into this endless cycle of suffering is a completely pointless filler issue. I even initially skipped over it while reading through the storyline, and after going back to check it out, I can safely say that I did not miss a single thing. If anything, this issue proves just how little direction this series has under its current leadership. Nick Lowe. Oh, sorry. So join us today as we go over the Amazing Spider-Man issue 65 Point Death, the most pointless issue in this entire volume. Before we get into that though, I just want to take a quick second to say that here at The Stash, we're trying to reach 7,000 subscribers before the end of the month. It's a huge ask, but with your help, I know we can do it. So if you like Spider-Man or just comic content in general, feel free to stick around and maybe hit that subscribe button. Also, if you want to go that extra mile, consider becoming a channel member. For only $5 Australian, you get exclusive badges, custom emojis, and behind the scenes updates, as well as your own video requests. But anyway, with all that being said, let's jump right back into the video. So our story begins with a flashback, one that shows a young Phil Coulson searching for his grandpa, only to unfortunately find him dead on his chair. We then head back to the present day where Peter Parker has just quit being not only Earth's champion, but Spider-Man altogether. Doctor Strange warns him that without his help, the Earth will fall. But right now, Peter couldn't care less and slams the door on his way out. Doctor Strange calls after him, yet it's far too late. He then turns to Coulson, who's been watching through the mirror, and calls him out for just standing by. Strange wants Coulson to act, to do something, yet he has no clue what to talk to Peter about. Strange sternly replies with getting Spider-Man to return to his role, to return to being Earth's champion, and to uphold his responsibility. Coulson tells Strange he can't take sides, but the good doctor isn't having any of it. He's not the Watcher. He's allowed to intervene, and if there's anyone who knows what experiencing thousands of death would be like, it's him. And so with that said, Phil sets out to talk to Peter. All the while inside his mind, he still feels out of place, like him being death was a wrong choice, a mistake even. But maybe it was for this. Maybe he is meant to be the one who brings Spider-Man out of the darkness. He finds Peter, who went out to get some food, and tries to talk to him, yet he slams the door once more. Obviously, to someone like Death, a closed door doesn't mean much, so he just follows through. Peter rudely asks Phil what he wants, which he replies with to talk to him. He then asks if he can take a seat, only for Peter to tell him he doesn't care. Phil sits, only to stand a second later, and begins to tell Peter the story of how he first experienced death, by finding his grandpa on his chair. He can't remember much about it though. Next time death properly had an effect on him was when his dog died, and after that was his father. Now he doesn't know why the Death Stone chose him to take over, is basically what he's trying to say. He feels like there are so many more qualified people that should have been given the job. But before he can continue, Peter cuts him off, saying how could he coach him through this moment if he doesn't even know him. Phil tells him, "Of course I know you. You're Spider-Man, the amazing, spectacular, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. You're a hero, you're..." But once again, Peter cuts him off, only to belittle all he's done in that suit by calling himself nothing more than a costume clown doing cartwheels in the street. He asks Coulson what has he actually done besides just delay the certainty of death. Phil admits Peter is right, he doesn't know him. And so Pete gives him permission to go through his mind, to watch all the horrors and tragedies he's had to suffer. From the death of his parents, to Uncle Ben, to George and Gwen Stacy, Ned Leeds, Harry and Norman Osborn, DeWolf, Ben Reilly, even the actress who played Aunt May in issue 400. From there we see his grand moments like If This Be My Destiny and Kraven's Last Hunt. Before we continue though, Peter tells Phil to stop, for to him, none of this matters, since everyone dies anyway. But thanks to that experience, it's at the very least giving Coulson some closure, some needed context as to why he was chosen to be Death. It's almost as if it's unlocked a door in his memory, and Peter showed him how to walk through it. I guess the only positive of this issue was that Peter still managed to help someone even if it was unintentional. But anyway, we go back to that day, the time he found his grandpa dead. He actually encountered death itself. With no powers, with nothing out of the ordinary, he was somehow looking at death straight in the eyes, and even it picks up on that. Phil asks Death if his grandpa is in heaven, but he's not met with the answer he wanted. Instead, Death rambles about how when Phil's granddad died, a version of him perished along with him. A version of Phil only his grandfather knew. All the stories and thoughts and memories he had of him, that only he had of him, are now gone forever. And so Death tells the boy he should feel diminished, he should feel less than. For this will happen countless of times, but when Phil will die, he will join with all those different versions, becoming not only the person he was, but the person he was to other people. Death continues by saying how people are always scared of them, but they have no reason to be. For death is what simply awaits. But much to Death's surprise, Phil says he's not scared. To which Death replies with, "Then perhaps you are special, after all." And so our story ends as we come back to the present day once more to see Peter leave his apartment and Coulson behind. As he walks the streets of New York, he ignores all the people who usually help along the way. Also, he can go and eat a pizza. Yes, that is how this story ends. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, this book desperately needs to end. This entire run, spanning 66 soon to be 67 issues, has been one long exercise in making Peter Parker a mopey loser. And this issue only serves to emphasize that tiresome theme. There was a time when Spider-Man was about resilience, about pushing forward no matter how much life knocked him down. But in this story, where Peter literally dies over and over again only to fully quit being Spider-Man and doom the world, it just feels so exhausting. Especially because it's not just out of place with Spider-Man's decades of history, but also because it's simply incredibly frustrating to read. Maybe, just maybe this storyline could have worked under different leadership, but with Nick Lowe overseeing it, it's clear that there's no real direction beyond just keeping Peter miserable. And if that wasn't bad enough, Amazing Spider-Man issue 65 Point Death ends up being a complete filler issue, which was sort of as expected, I guess. But it's not even the fun kind, but rather the kind that makes this entire thing just feel utterly pointless. I originally skipped from issue 65 to 66, and after finally reading this one, I can say with confidence that I missed nothing, as I said before in the start of the video. This issue doesn't add to the story, it doesn't change the stakes, and worst of all, it doesn't even justify its own existence. Issue 66 has Peter doing the exact same shit as this one, except it's even more over the top. You can't even say that this was a cash grab, considering these books always fill the shelves up consistently just to collect dust. In fact, I don't even think ASM has been able to beat Ultimate Spider-Man in sales ever since that book started. But anyway, the only real development is a sort of origin as to why Phil Coulson is now Death in the Marvel Universe, which might be interesting if it had any meaningful impact on Spider-Man's arc, but as we could tell already from the next issue, he doesn't even appear. But for Peter, it's just another excuse to go over his hardships, which we've already done twice in this one story arc, and watch him sulk. I get that he's in a bad place mentally after witnessing millions of deaths, but does that mean he has to look like he's about to go buy the skinniest jeans ever known to mankind? The entire tone of this issue is just depressing and tiresome. It feels like Nick Lowe is going through some sort of midlife crisis that he's now forcing all of us to go and suffer along with him. Also, Peter's character design fucking sucks. Like, throughout the entire 8 Deaths of Spider-Man storyline, his face has changed almost every issue, and it's just a part of this way bigger problem modern Spider-Man has. That problem being, he's just completely unrecognizable now. I miss when Peter Parker had distinct, recognizable features. Like back in the 70s to 90s, you could tell exactly who he was at a glance. Now he looks so generic that out of context, like just even without anything to do with the story or the speech bubbles, whatever, I doubt most people would even know who this was meant to be. The only part I remotely liked about this issue was how the montage of Peter's iconic moments or deaths as Spider-Man in a way validated some forgotten moments or events that were just straight up retcon. Odd how they didn't include Aunt Major in Civil War though. But even that small moment I count as a positive, a very small one, was tainted by the amateurish writing. The line, "The universe, it seems, cannot let Spider-Man be happy," in particular, annoyed me. Not because it's inherently bad, but because it feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy from Nick Lowe himself and the entire editorial team. Spider-Man can be happy. Spider-Man was happy, but you, Nick Lowe, refused to let him. In the end though, the Amazing Spider-Man issue 65 Point Death is a weak, unnecessary filler that just adds nothing of value to Peter's journey. It's more interested in setting up Coulson's role as Death, which doesn't really matter to the actual story, than in making Spider-Man's suffering feel real and meaningful. It's just misery for misery's sake. The entire issue was pointless, but hey, I guess that's fitting, because this entire volume feels like it has no real purpose. Spider-Man!